One thing I wanted to ask you, Nick, we've been talking a lot about the Warriors' lack of big moves, and for you, it's just their reality. And I hear you. I know everything that you're talking about. It's a little strange because you see all the other moves that have happened around the league, and you hear Mike Dunleavy, the pre-draft presser, talk about, well, these teams are going to be so much more, going to be less likely to trade their first-round picks. Teams are going to value their picks more now. And I get the reasons why, but you have all the picks that went from the Heat to the Bucks. You had all the picks that went from the Raptors to the Clippers. There was other crazy trades. We saw the Jaylen Brown 2 first-round picks for Boston from Philadelphia. When you talk about the Warriors' refusal at times to move off of first-round picks, is that your idea of how they view it, or is what you think is the smart strategy of it all? Because I think there's a lot of Warrior fans who will say, you're absolutely right, that's how they think, but they shouldn't be thinking that way. You need to go and get a star in here by any means necessary and kind of restart this whole next era of Warriors basketball.
Mr. Grandi, in the lead up to the draft, so this was a few weeks ago, Mike Dunleavy held a press conference like the week before.
Yeah.
And he said, the way the league is going, first-round picks are more valuable than ever. And you hit on it, and it's worth repeating over and over again. With the lottery rules that are in place and the cap with the way that it is, first-round picks provide certainty for teams. If you hit on a first-round pick and that first-round pick develops over the next few years, that's about as good as you can have it in the league, because what you're hoping is you hit on these picks, you have your star or two in place, and then you see where the chips all fall.
Well, the one word that you use there is the word that Warrior fans will say is the key word, if. You hit.
And that is pro sports in a nutshell.
Yep.
Because nobody knows for sure, and it's why there is so much angst in the fan base. And I get it. I was here when Wiseman was here. I left the second year after he kind of got going, and you're like, he got hurt, and then he didn't play, and then it quickly kind of evaporated from that moment. But they whiffed, and they all know it, and they all acknowledge it. The front office, Lacob, Kerr, everybody knows that they whiffed on that pick. And I understand why people are upset, and then they followed that up with Kuminga, and we know how that all went. I just mean that when you're trying to look at what happens now and in the future, if you're looking for the Warriors to move off any one of those picks, you better be sure that you have a star coming behind. And I have not gotten the sense at all, aside from Giannis, that they really felt comfortable loading up all the different possibilities and saying, all right, let's get rid of all the assets that we have for somebody that may change where we're going just a little bit.
888-957-9570. Nick has labeled this show the 4-hour reality check for Warrior fans. If you want to fire back at him, now's the time. Again, 888-957-9570. Let's try Javier in Vacaville again. What's up, Javier? You're on with Nick and Grandi. What do you got?
How you guys doing today?
Good, man. What about you?
Javier, what's up, man?
All right, sorry about earlier. I just having some phone issues. T-Mobile ain't the best. But, I don't want to come off at all in any way that's disrespectful or rude. But I'm going to be honest. This whole we are getting a reality check, no. Born and raised in the Bay, and to say Jaylen Brown and their compensation of Paul George, who's been one of the most overrated players of the last 5 seasons, who's on 2 more years at almost $50 to $60 million. And the Warriors, we wouldn't want to invest in Jaylen Brown because of what could come off next year, and they wouldn't be that much better. What are we talking about here? Jaylen Brown led the Celtics to the 2nd seed in the Eastern Conference without Jason Tatum. He averaged 29, 48, 28, 29, really just under 29, 6'5" on 48% from the field, was 6th in the MVP race, an NBA Finals MVP, an Eastern Conference Finals MVP, an NBA champion, and he's 30 years old this year, and you're saying, why would you want to give up the farm for him? I don't know, because he's a top 10 player in the NBA. To say Giannis, who's coming off a torn Achilles and/or bad leg issue, has major leg concerns, is somebody you'd want to invest the farm in. So you're saying, well, we'll do this investment on when the NBA has a salary cap space when the Warriors have players come off the books next NBA free agency. Well, sorry to break it to you, pal. Steph Curry isn't guaranteed to play at this level next year. He's not even guaranteed to play at this high level that he's been played in this coming season based on not just the runner's need, but everything that's came into ensue. And to say that Paul George is a better asset than Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler's an expiring contract. The Warriors go with 3 picks, so you're going to bank on the Warriors making first-round selections that are going to be the end-all, be-all, like a Yaxel Lindenborg, who's a good young player, potentially, comparison to what the value of a Jaylen Brown would bring, who would be a 30-year-old player that could be the next building block of your organization, and to say, oh, well, you only have LeBron for 1 year. Said who? You're telling me that Steph Curry, Jaylen Brown, LeBron James, Draymond Green, and Kristaps Porzingis want to be a top 4 seed in the Western Conference? What world are you living in, dog? Ja Morant was given up for 2 players that nobody in the NBA wants, salaried up with Jeremiah Grant and Chris Murray. I'm not saying that they should win with Ja Morant, but the act as if Jaylen Brown is just, I mean, he's okay. What NBA game are you watching? Like,
Javier, hold on now. There's a lot there, so let's go through it. First of all, I respect the heck out of the passion because that's what sports are all about. You got to have passion for your teams, and I respect you calling and laying it all out there. But there are a couple things. One,
thanks, Javier.
Does it concern you at all that the Celtics were like, we want to get out of the Jaylen Brown business so badly that we are willing to give up 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and take back Paul George just so we are away from Jaylen Brown?
If you would have asked the people in the know around the league, what would it take for the Sixers to get off of the Paul George contract, people would have said they might have had to give up one of the Clippers' first-round picks that they have, which is the most valuable first-round picks they have access to, just to get rid of Paul George.
Just to get him off the book. So
they gave up 2, and they got Jaylen Brown back.
So that doesn't concern anybody, and it's not just for Javier. It's for anybody who's saying, oh, my gosh, they should have gotten Jaylen Brown.
Why was the value for Jaylen Brown like that, though?
There's the question. And that is what I'm so curious to see what comes out in the next couple weeks.
Because Javier ran down Jaylen Brown's resume, and he's right about it.
And he's a finals MVP, and he absolutely led the Celtics to a hell of a year, basically on his own without Tatum in that star role. It's all true. You are not worried at all that Boston, who drafted Jaylen Brown and developed Jaylen Brown and gave him a mega max extension, wanted out so badly that they took back Paul George for a couple first-round picks. So that's the first part. But the second part, and I think where Javier was getting a little more heated as he was explaining.
He was coming after you.
What he felt is, look, you can make that move and you can say, all right, Jimmy, who's not playing right now, and the deal's expiring, and 3 first-round picks. Because if you are sitting there and you're the Celtics, you're going to say, you're giving us an extra pick because Paul George can play. Jimmy can't play, at least for the next few months going into next year. You're not worried at all that Jaylen Brown and Steph, that's just not that good? I mean, that's where I would kind of go. The reason why the Celtics were awesome last year, at least in the regular season, was because Jaylen Brown had a hell of a year, but they had a lot of good players around him. Hello, everybody, all the Warriors fans out there, all the Jaylen Brown fans out there. The Warriors don't have near the level of talent around Steph in this case that Boston had around Jaylen Brown last year. And you want to get mad at the front office for that? Be my guest. Go ahead, because they're older. They don't have a lot of young guys. They certainly don't have a lot of young guys who can score. That is something to get mad at. But I don't blame the Warriors at all for not going after Jaylen Brown right now, given the circumstances on their roster. That is a hell of a huge bet to make on a guy that Boston wanted no part of, and a guy, Mr. Grandi, that, as you said, he's going to make you better. But if we're saying, all right, they were the 10 seed last year, in a best-case scenario next year, you move Jimmy out, you move all your picks out, and you plug Jaylen Brown in, and he has another really good year. Okay, you're the 5th seed. Well, guess what? You're the 5th seed for the next few years because there's not a lot of other ways for you to get better on the roster because you just gave away all your picks.
So what you're saying, though, is being the 5th seed in a perfect world for a couple of years isn't worth the difference in...
It's not worth that risk to me.
You're hurting yourself, your chances of being good in the future, but as a result of not making that move, you're maybe doomed for being around the 10th seed again the next couple of years.
And they may well be. But again, everybody can have a difference of opinion, and I'm sure that Javier is not alone, especially for a lot of fans who saw Jaylen Brown. I mean, he had that moment out here where you're like, oh, this guy can play.
Oh, he was dominant in that game at Chase.
And he's going to get a lot better.
So good in that game.
And this could be a lot of fun. I get it, but there are 2 concerns for me. One, Boston just said, we're out. We don't want this anymore. 2, and even more importantly, the best case scenario of adding him, given what it would take to get him here, doesn't swing the difference for me enough to make the deal.
But all right, let's say 3 years from now, Steph's done, and the experiment with Jaylen Brown is at least going well enough that the Warriors want him back, or they've already extended him at that point. I know at that point he's 32, going on 33, or whatever the case would be, and you're talking about they want to clear their book so that they have an opportunity to do whatever it is, sign whatever free agent potentially at whatever amount of money when the time comes. But, I mean, Jaylen Brown would be one of those guys already. And I know he's 32, 33 at that point, approaching like the tail end of his prime, but I'd rather have that than not.
Well, here's the other part to this. And this is where it gets a little bit more uncomfortable. Bobby Marks, my old friend from ESPN, he got crunched last week because he did an interview in which he was told, one of the analytics guys said, hey, Jaylen Brown isn't the 7th best player on a team. And it was in the context of a much larger conversation. But that was the pull quote that everybody got attached to. What I would tell you, Mr. Grandi, is I'm certainly not going to speak for Bobby. I would tell you there are absolutely people in the league that say, Jaylen Brown, really good player, accomplished a lot in Boston, not somebody who we look at with the numbers and go, yep, this is a guy that we want to build everything around moving forward.
And translation is not worth the contract.
And there's another key to the day, my friend.
Because he's making a max contract.
And there is the absolute key to any NBA conversation, not just for us right now, but throughout the course of the next few seasons. If you have a player on a max contract who isn't living up to that max contract every year, either because of injury, in Jimmy Butler's case, because of inefficiency, because of age, which I'm concerned about in the Steph case over the next couple of years.
Also why the Lakers were fine moving on from LeBron.
100%. If you have a player in this era of the NBA where you're so limited with the cap situation, and you can sit there and go, all right, like, this player, we signed him to this deal, but he's not living up to this level of the deal anymore, you are screwed. And that's when you have big, big problems for any team. But that's why, the idea of, well, why didn't they get Jaylen Brown? Why didn't they just do it? Hello. Philly was the best offer, clearly, that Boston thought it could get. And we all agree, that's all they gave up?
Yep.
There are serious questions out there on a variety of levels across the league that Jaylen Brown may just not be the player that so many Celtics fans and others hoped he would be long-term. Guess what, though? He has the chance to shut everybody up if he keeps producing like he did next year. But let's all take a step back and go, wait a minute. That's all Boston could get back for a guy who is a finals MVP, helped the Celtics repeatedly get to the level that they are. That is a big red flag for me.
We have some news, Nick. Not the giant news we've been waiting for, but some news. The Warriors are missing out on another player now, Nick, because they're waiting on all this other business to get taken care of. This comes from Shams Charania. Free agent guard Pat Spencer has agreed to a 2-way contract with the Phoenix Suns. The former Warrior Pat Spencer is a Phoenix Sun.
That became clear.
A two-way
One
deal.
of the best quotes of the entire season.
Oh, yeah.
Pat is that mother. That became clear.
What was that? Was that the Philly game? Was it the Cleveland game? I forget which game that was on that road trip.
That was the first game was.
I think it was Philly, wasn't
Philly. The second game was Cleveland.
Yeah.
So I think it was probably.
He took him out, I think, at the end of that Philly game, even though he'd been playing well. Steve did, and then
and then Cleveland. Oh my gosh! Grandi, and now it makes sense because we're talking about Pat, but his teammates after those two games, I was standing there interviewing Pat, and Moses Moody walks by and he goes, you're talking to that MFer, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, we were just cracking up because we're going, oh yeah, like this is gonna last for a little while. So happy for Pat, he got a new deal, but it shows kind of where the Warriors were at because Steve Kerr absolutely loves the guy.
Yeah.
And he is where he is now.
Let me tell you something. This guy is a ball player.
And he was playing major minutes for the Warriors at times, but the best
Big
he could
time.
get is a two-way deal with the Phoenix Suns. So kind of the reality of the Warriors roster last year, too.
No question.
Yeah. 888-957-9570. A little bit of news there again. Pat Spencer, two-way contract with the Suns. He'll not be returning to the Warriors.